What are the biggest challenges you're seeing HR teams face as they actually roll out the product itself outside of the strategy?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem that you see across the board with HR wanting to, everyone wants to roll out financial well-being, and it is sometimes newer for companies, and companies aren't sure what to measure. And like I said, it's so important, and you can get help on understanding guidelines and what you want to measure. But if you roll out a program without benchmarks for success, it becomes really difficult, because you want to be able to report back to leadership how the program's going. And so without those benchmarks at the beginning, it's really difficult to be able to kind of compare against, industry or where you thought you wanted to be. And then, it just can lead to confusion. So I think working with your team internally, working with your vendor, making sure that there's kind of benchmarks for success laid out ahead of time. Even working with your consultant, I'm sure, you do things like this all the time, Hannah, like helping companies understand what it should look like for their industry and how to get the best, results, because it can vary tremendously based on the type of company.
Yeah. I think in general, when I talk to HR teams, 9 out of 10 times when they say, this program's not really working out, it's because they're saying they're not getting the engagement that they'd hoped for, or the engagement that they set when they set those goals that we talked about earlier on. And a lot of that piece is, yes, selecting the right provider, but I can think of one specific example of all they did was launch the benefit. They had really good enrollment up front, and then everything just trickled off. A big piece of launching a strategy like this and maintaining it is that ongoing communication. How are you driving employees to the platform as an employer? The employer has so much more influence than they realize a lot of times, and just simply reminding employees, sometimes it's as easy as a poster. Your employees better than we might. So you have to understand what's the best way for your employees to digest information, and how can you communicate it to them on an ongoing basis to drive that engagement? Because if the employer and the HR team aren't doing that alongside the provider, it's going to be really hard to get the engagement that has been set.
That's incredibly true. That's a really good point.
What about you? Do you have any examples of times it's worked out really well for groups, or maybe not so well?
Yeah. So, I think it's a great, there was a company that we launched with that was, a large employer, Fortune 100 employer. And a big part of it was that they had so much internal buy-in. They actually brought in a data team to survey their employees ahead of time. They asked them about 10 different financial decisions that they wanted to measure against. So, how did they feel about paying off their credit card debt? How are they feeling about saving for a long-term goal? And they saw where their financial confidence levels were before they rolled anything out. And then, 6 months after rollout, launched another survey with the exact same employees, asking the same questions. And then they were able to present to us the delta, the change between how people felt before and after. And that was just amazing to have that type of buy-in from a company. And obviously not every company can put that many resources towards something like this, but for a company that really, really cared about this and wanted to dive really deep into where were these financial challenges for their employee base, because at a company that large, there was so much diversity of income, diversity of life stage, and they were really able to see the well-being and the financial confidence level of their employee base. So that was one of my favorite experiences, just to see that much excitement and engagement and buy-in from a company. So yeah, that's one of my favorite examples.